The nationalization of the Suez Canal. Causes crisis and global impact. The nationalization of the Suez Canal in 1956 by Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser marked a defining moment in post-colonial history and Cold War geopolitics. The event triggered a major international crisis involving Britain, France, and Israel, and signaled a dramatic shift in global power dynamics. More than just a regional conflict, the Suez Crisis became a turning point in the decline of European colonial influence and the rise of nationalist movements across the developing world. Background and nationalization. The Suez Canal, completed in 1869, had long been a strategic waterway connecting the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea, making it a vital artery for global trade, especially for European powers. Although it passed through Egyptian territory, the canal was largely controlled by the Suez Canal Company, a Franco-British enterprise. Even after Egypt gained nominal independence from Britain in 1922, British forces retained control over the canal zone to protect imperial interests. By the 1950s, President Gamal Abdel Nasser, a champion of Arab nationalism and non-alignment, sought to assert full Egyptian sovereignty. In 1955, tensions escalated when the United States and Britain withdrew funding for the Aswan High Dam after Egypt's growing ties with the Soviet Union. In response, on July 26, 1956, Nasser nationalized the Suez Canal, declaring it would be run by Egypt and its revenues used to fund the dam's construction. British and French response. Britain and France, the primary stakeholders in the canal, viewed Nasser's move as a direct threat to their economic and strategic interests. For them, it was also a challenge to their global prestige at a time when colonial influence was waning. Unable to tolerate Nasser's defiance and fearing the spread of anti-Western sentiment in the Middle East, the two countries plotted a military response with Israel, which also had grievances against Egypt over blockades and cross-border raids. The military phase of the Suez Crisis began after Israel's initial invasion of the Sinai Peninsula on October 29, 1956. Britain and France issued an ultimatum to both sides, demanding a ceasefire and withdrawal, knowing Egypt would refuse. When Nasser rejected the ultimatum, British and French forces bombed Egyptian positions and landed troops near the canal. This military campaign, known as the Suez Crisis, was meant to depose Nasser and retake control of the canal. This was followed by a coordinated Anglo-French intervention under a pre-planned scheme known as Operation Musketeer. On October 31st, British and French air forces launched bombing raids on Egyptian airfields and military targets, aiming to cripple Egypt's ability to resist. Despite Egypt's limited military preparedness, resistance was fierce. The Egyptian army and civilians fought back with determination, particularly around key targets like Port Said and Ismailia, located near the canal's northern entrance. After issuing an ultimatum that was rejected by Nasser, British and French paratroopers were dropped into Port Said on November 5th, while amphibious landings followed. They quickly secured parts of the city, but progress was slower than expected due to urban combat, sabotage by Egyptian forces, and strong civilian opposition. Although the Anglo-French troops succeeded in capturing some positions along the canal zone, they failed to reach and occupy the entire canal, largely due to intense international pressure. The rapid diplomatic response by the United States, the Soviet Union, and the United Nations halted the military campaign, with mounting global condemnation and economic threats, especially from the U.S. Britain and France were forced into a ceasefire just days after the landings began. Despite their military superiority, the operation was seen as a political and moral failure. The brief occupation of Port Said, widespread destruction, and images of imperial-style aggression turned global opinion decisively against the invaders. It also severely damaged the reputations of both countries, especially Britain, which appeared weakened and diplomatically isolated. Impact on trade and global economy. The Suez Canal's closure during the conflict had significant economic repercussions, particularly for Europe. As a major conduit for oil shipments from the Middle East to Europe and Asia, the canal's blockage disrupted global trade routes. Tankers were forced to take the longer and costlier route around the Cape of Good Hope, leading to delays, higher transportation costs, and oil shortages. Some European countries experienced fuel rationing and energy crises as a result. The crisis demonstrated the vulnerability of international trade to regional conflicts and highlighted how control over strategic choke points could influence global markets. Even after the conflict ended, the need for a stable and neutral administration of key trade routes became a key issue in international diplomacy. Soviet Union's role and support. The Soviet Union, while not directly involved militarily, played a crucial role in Egypt's diplomatic and technical recovery. The USSR vocally condemned the tripartite invasion and issued stern warnings to Britain and France, even hinting at possible military retaliation, a bold move that intensified pressure on the Western powers. After the withdrawal of British, French, and Israeli forces, the Soviets deepened their relationship with Egypt, offering extensive military aid and sending engineers and maritime specialists to help clear the canal of mines and sunken vessels. Their assistance was crucial in restoring the canal to full operation, reinforcing Egypt's claim of sovereignty and boosting the credibility of Soviet support for newly independent nations. Global consequences and long-term impact. The Suez Crisis exposed the declining power of traditional European colonial empires and underscored the emerging dominance of the United States and the Soviet Union in world affairs. Britain and France, humiliated on the global stage, realized they could no longer act independently without American support. For Nasser, the crisis was a political triumph. He emerged as a hero in the Arab world and a symbol of anti-imperialist resistance. Moreover, the successful nationalization of the canal and Egypt's ability to operate effectively marked a significant shift in control of global trade infrastructure from colonial powers to sovereign states. It inspired other post-colonial nations to nationalize strategic industries and reinforced the importance of economic independence. The Suez Crisis also emphasized the role of international organizations, such as the United Nations, in conflict resolution and led to the first large-scale deployment of a UN peacekeeping force. Conclusion. The nationalization of the Suez Canal was far more than a dispute over a shipping route. It was a clash of imperial legacy, nationalist aspirations, Cold War strategy, and global economics. Nasser's bold move redefined Egypt's role on the world stage, weakened European colonial powers, and reshaped the global order. The crisis not only marked the end of Britain and France's dominance in the Middle East, but also highlighted the growing influence of newly independent nations in shaping the future of international politics and trade. Please like and subscribe for more content like this. Comment below. Take care.